Confined within the walls of a South African jail, the young lawyer from India found no reason to complain.
Some say that jail is a palace. Others look upon it as a beautiful garden. Some others hold that through the jail gates we shall pass from our present bondage to freedom.
The year was 1907. The young lawyer from India was Mohandas Gandhi. Gandhi led his fellow Indians in a non-violent struggle against racial oppression for 8 years. They marched into forbidden territory. They burned their registration papers. They expected to be arrested, and they were not disappointed. Gandhi said, "Non-violent refusal to cooperate with injustice is the way to defeat it." J.C. Smuts, the Interior Minister, tells Gandhi, "You reduce me to helplessness. How can we lay hands on you without looking like villains?" He became known for his ability to mobilize people and for his increasingly simple way of life. He gave his non-violent weapon a name, Satyagraha, holding to truth. In every decade and on every continent, underdogs have taken up Gandhi's strategies to fight for their rights and freedom.
Nonviolence means fighting back, but you're fighting back with other weapons.
The power that Gandhi discovered changed the 20th century.
Major funding for this series was provided by Susan and Perry Lerner. Additional funding was provided by the Albert Einstein Institution, advancing the study of strategic nonviolent action in conflicts throughout the world. Elizabeth and John H. Van Merkenstein III, Abby and Alan Levy, and the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations.
Spring weather comes early in 1940, adding to the illusion that tranquil Denmark can remain untouched by the war that is spreading across Europe. Danish government has proclaimed neutrality and reduced its armed forces by half. Denmark intends to remain at peace. On the morning of April 9th, everything changes. Attacking by air, land, and sea, the German war machine meets token opposition in the south, but then Denmark orders its troops to lay down their arms.
We could not imagine that it had anything to do with the war or occupation or anything like that. We flew out of our beds and looked out of the window. They were very close. Those Germans, they were always so noisy. Suddenly we realized that this was something very terrible.
The invaders capture the headquarters of the Danish Army General Staff without firing a shot. Disbelieving Danes wander the streets, watching helplessly. German leaflets and posters say, "We come not as enemies but as friends," and promise that Denmark will remain under Danish law and government. It's hard to believe.
We asked them, "What do you want?" well, we have come to help you against the British. And we said, we guess you're the right ones to do that.
Hitler has occupied an entire country in under 6 hours. Late that afternoon, Danish Prime Minister Thorvald Snorning asks the Danish Parliament to officially accept the terms of the German occupation.
My father felt that his policy was least harmful for the people. If we had used the military on April 9th, they would have bombed Copenhagen without a doubt. And thousands of people would have lost their lives.
Rather than suffer certain defeat, Danish political leaders choose not to fight. Their goal is survival. They will attempt to hold the Germans to their promises, to respect Danish neutrality. They will negotiate the terms of occupation under protest, hoping to turn the charade of friendly relations to Denmark's advantage.
The king was in place, the parliament was legislating, the police was in charge of the law and order, the Danish courts were functioning, and the Jewish community was functioning.
At the start, German troops are well-mannered and respectful. But their very presence is a provocation. Danes wonder, now that we have capitulated, what next? They have not prepared for a German occupation. They have no Gandhi. They have no resistance organization.
In most homes, the attitude was that we have to accept this and try to make it work, but for goodness sake, don't try to have anything to do with them. They never speak to a German soldier, and be careful what you do.
Danish cabinet ministers adopt a policy of resistance disguised as collaboration. Danes will cooperate with the Germans, but only as a tactic to preserve self-rule. German demands will be negotiated by diplomats, delayed by bureaucrats, and quietly obstructed when possible. For many Danes, it's not enough.
Denmark was humiliated, and the whole population actually suddenly felt that they had lost something of their dignity, something of their country's dignity. What were you to do? What could you do in this situation? You couldn't go out fighting. The fight was not there. So they gathered in the park of the city and sing national anthems.
Every week, the songfests grow, signaling the birth of Danish solidarity against a common enemy. And Danes take new pride in their king, who rides alone every morning as always.
People were very proud that we had a king. It was like a way of demonstrating against the Germans. And we weren't interested in any form of dictatorship.
Germans ignore exhibitions of national pride, as long as they do not interfere with German objectives. To use Denmark's farms to feed the German army, to use Danish factories and shipyards to supply war material. Relations with Germany are handled by Danish Foreign Minister Erik Scavenius, a man many believe is pro-German.
When people argued with him and said, well, in the long run, we are losing our respect all over the country, he said, well, yes, that's correct, but we might keep our respect and be dead, all of us. He said, how many corpses do you want in order to save your honor?
Scavenius wants the Germans to think they're getting what they want, to keep pressure off Denmark. In November 1941, he goes to Berlin to sign a treaty justifying the German invasion of the Soviet Union. When his photograph with Hitler is published in Denmark, outraged students take to the streets. After 5 days, Danish police restore order, but public support for the Scavenius policies is severely damaged. Underground resistance leaders condemn even tactical collaboration as treason. Their primary weapon is information. The illegal press reaches 2.5 million, Denmark's entire adult population. Uncensored news of the war, gathered from the BBC and other sources, fuels Danish hopes. And the illegal press also encourages active resistance of all kinds. Small-scale attacks, arson, the stealing of weapons from German soldiers, pouring sugar into gas tanks are the work of untrained high school students. They say, if the adults won't do something, we will. German authorities order local police to crack down, but patriotic young Danes are determined.
I was very angry at the time. A lot of young people were angry. And we were angry that we hadn't done more, resisted more than we had. We later realized that it was a hopeless situation. But that doesn't change the feeling, which I still have, that we protected our country so poorly.
In November, SS General Werner Best takes charge in Denmark. Hitler tells him to rule with an iron hand. Best pressures Erik Scavenius, the new prime minister, but most Danes have turned against the Scavenius policies. On BBC broadcast from London, a Danish political exile, John Christmas Møller, now speaks defiantly against the prime minister and calls for active resistance.
Understand that the merciless rule here, and it's time for Denmark to take a stand. Are you going to join, and are you willing to contribute? We must ensure that we do not harm the soul of the nation.
Spring 1943. The German occupation is 3 years old. A facade of cooperation continues, but popular loyalty is shifting to the resistance movement. By day, the government campaigns against sabotage. By night, explosions rock the factories and rail lines, cutting German supply lines at their source. By summer of 1943, reports of German defeats in Russia, North Africa, and Southern Europe encouraged the Danes to more vigorous resistance.
There were strikes in the provincial towns, not only strikes in the factories, but the whole cities where administration, stores, everything was closed.
Sabotage attacks more than double in only 1 month. But those Danes who are unable to carry out sabotage find other ways to resist, even defying their own government.
First of all, we worked really slowly. We never worked at the same speed as before the war. We received orders to build new ships, but the ships were never finished. The construction was sabotaged. So in the end, they had to drag them down to Germany to finish them.
The Danish authority did whatever they could to stop the strikes. And they found out that this was impossible. They could not. They had lost the authority. The authority of leading these masses lay with some local, unauthorized, not elected leaders, and with the illegal press.
A government in name only. Danish political leaders have one last act to perform. On the morning of August 28, 1943, they receive an ultimatum from the German occupiers. Strikes must be banned, curfews imposed, saboteurs executed. Denmark must answer by 4 p.m. Parliament debates the demands for 6 hours.
Now, these were demands they could not say yes to. And then they told the Germans that they could not accept this ultimatum.
Foreign Minister Scavenius and his cabinet resign. Parliament goes home. Denmark is no longer under Danish authority. Direct German rule, postponed for 3 years by the Scavenius policy of cooperation, descends on Denmark. The Wehrmacht occupies key facilities. Gatherings of 5 or more persons are banned. The new rules are brutally enforced.
Now we knew where we were. Two opposite parties, and cooperation had become impossible, so we would have to go our different ways, trying to make things work, of course, but there was no doubt now that they were the enemy and we were the occupied country.
With the fig leaf of friendly relations removed, Germany has suffered a defeat and now faces a hostile and rebellious population. Danish resistance groups quickly fill the vacuum, communicating through the well-organized illegal press. Just weeks later, they face their first crisis, when Adolf Hitler orders his commanders to impose Germany's racial laws in Denmark.
Having survived from the outbreak of the war, there was, of course, kind of, belief that things would be all right. But the shield which had protected us against the fate of Jews in the rest of Europe, the shield disappeared, and we were standing undefended against the Germans.
The German Gestapo has obtained a list of names and addresses for the 7,000 Danish Jews. But plans for the roundup have been leaked. The Jews are warned. Thousands of Danes step forward to save them.
I remember the shock I got when the day I went to school and suddenly the headmaster knocked on the door and called me and another Jewish boy out of the class and told us, you better hurry up because your parents are waiting for you. You have to get out of your flat. The Germans are coming tonight.
The roundup begins on the night of October 1st. But the Jews have been hidden in attics and cellars, in the churches and homes of thousands of Danes who have spontaneously taken them in.
We were sent, for example, one time to Fyn, to Odense, to pick up some Jews who were arriving by train from Jutland. And we were to help them pass as casually as possible through the German checkpoints at Storebælt. The ferries there were closely guarded by the Germans, so it was necessary for us to pretend that we had a relationship with these people.
Their refuge will be Sweden, only a few miles across waters patrolled by the German Navy. They hide in forests and wait. Herbert Pundig and his family are picked up by one of the many fishermen who risk the voyage and save all but a few hundred of Denmark's Jews.
I looked back towards the coast and I saw something which I'll never forget in my whole life. I'm not a religious person myself, but still I'm still moved when I think about it. On this sandy beach I saw the three persons, our, so to say, savior, his wife and the wife of the fisherman, kneeling on the beach with folded lifting hands towards heaven, praying for our safe passage.
The rescue of the Jews has united and inspired Danes, just as they are coming to view the resistance movement as their de facto government. The Freedom Council publishes a first clandestine leaflet in November 1943. A program of resistance aimed at denying Germany the benefits of occupation. With explosives and equipment airdropped by British forces, the underground avoids human targets, concentrating on war-related industry. Their first targets are Danish industries and transport that supply the German army. Each success brings harsher and deadlier reprisals by the Nazis, who bomb theaters, clubs, and Copenhagen's renowned Tivoli Gardens. In a desperate move to stop the explosions, the German governor puts the population of Copenhagen under curfew in June 1944.
It was triggered off by a large sabotage at one of the weapon factories. And really not the sabotage, but the open joy by the Copenhageners would see the smoke going up from the factory, which annoyed the German commandant, so that he declared a curfew, which was to start every afternoon at 6 o'clock.
Workers at the Burmeister and Wayne shipyard retaliate with an ingenious but risky scheme.
We had hoped to get rid of the curfew. We wanted to have our freedom. We didn't want to be locked up at night. At 12 noon, we went to the gate and started kicking it. We said we wanted to go home because we needed to water our gardens.
1,200 shipyard workers go home early. They insist it's not a strike. They must tend their gardens in the afternoon because the curfew stops them from gardening in the evening. The Go Home Early movement spreads fast. Thousands of workers in other factories walk off their jobs, but few go to their gardens. Congregating in the streets, they demonstrate, build bonfires, and taunt German patrols. 6 Danes are killed on the first day.
There were barricades in the streets. Everything was set on fire in the streets. All work stopped. No one wanted to go to work. All these things created a sense in the population that the Danes now had to fight against the Germans. And that was probably the most crucial effect of the general strike.
Nazi governor Werner Best tightens the vice daily. Troops are ordered to shoot at groups of 5 or more. Then he cuts off electricity, gas and water. Danes respond by cooking on fires and dipping water from a nearby lake. Best tries to blockade the city, to cut contact with the outside world. The population follows instructions from resistance leaders. Until the curfew ends and shootings stop, stay on strike, says the Freedom Council.
I looked up to it. It was the country's lawful, the ones we listened to. We'll be on strike until tomorrow at 12 o'clock. It was very, very clear to see. The people follow that. And precisely at 12 o'clock the next day, everything started up again. The Germans had great respect for that.
Best is desperate to resume production, but his military options are limited as troops have been taken out of Denmark to fight the losing war. Most of all, he knows that Danish workers are worth more alive than dead. On the 9th day, Best concedes. He will end the curfew and withdraw his troops if the strikers go back to work. The Freedom Council issues a victory bulletin which ends the walkout. It declares strikes are their most effective weapon. Unwittingly, the Danes have adopted Gandhi's favorite tactic by simply withdrawing their obedience. Recognizing the power of non-cooperation, the Council shifts its emphasis from encouraging sabotage to coordinating strikes. In the next month, they call for a series of symbolic 2-minute stoppages.
When the clock on the City Hall struck 12 noon, everything stopped in the City Hall square. There would be complete silence, and that's just something you did.
Denmark suffers through one last brutal winter, with shortages in fuel, water and food. And then it was spring.
As was normal in those days, we gathered round the wireless to hear the message from BBC, and then all of a sudden the transmission was interrupted, and then came this wonderful message that the Germans had given up.
A Danish historian concluded, Denmark had not won the war, but neither had it been defeated or destroyed. Most Danes had not been brutalized, by the Germans or by each other. Non-violent resistance saved the country and contributed more to the Allied victory than Danish arms ever could have.
It was a physical feeling, a combination of euphoria and the chill. It felt so strange. The tears welled up, and I remember very clearly that I spontaneously said, "So we survived." Those were probably the first words out of my mouth. So we survived.
Major funding for this series was provided by Susan and Perry Lerner. Additional funding was provided by the Albert Einstein Institution, advancing the study of strategic nonviolent action in conflicts throughout the world. Elizabeth and John H. Van Merkenstein III, Abby and Alan Levy, and the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations.